Okay. Hello, welcome back.
Hola, hola. Ahorita se conectaba del celular que voy camino a donde mi tía.
Ay, muy bien, muy bien. Bueno, pero funciona.
Sí, estoy. Bueno, la calle se ve como media desértica aquí. Supuestamente está pasando un huracán, no en Honduras exactamente, sino que y está en como tormenta tropical, pero toda la zona norte del país está hecho un desastre. Hay puentes que ya colapsados. Ahorita aquí en la ciudad, en la mera ciudad, supuestamente hay un montón de choques por todos lados. O sea, yo no entiendo, la gente también se volvió loca.
Ay, sí, hay que tener cuidado. Espero que tengan, que no tengan problemas.
Ay, eso espero, porque hasta el momento, bueno, a mí no me han llamado, no sé si han llamado a mi hermano o algo, porque como nosotros somos correduría de seguros,
Ah,
que
claro.
siempre que hay huracanes, cosas así, estamos pendientes de las llamadas por algún reclamo, de algo que sucede. Vale. Miren, el 2017 creo que fue la cosa, eh, que fue lo de la reelección de Juan Orlando, o sea, que en ese momento fue el presidente. La gente salió como loca a incendiar el país. Así estábamos todos nosotros como que, ¿qué es esto? Desde ese momento fue Juan Orlando que dijo que todo eso eran como actos de terrorismo y cuando va diciendo eso, la palabra terrorismo está literal excluida de las pólizas de seguro.
Sí.
Entonces, todos los daños que se estaban ocasionando en todo el bendito país era como entonces las aseguradoras lo van a absorber, no lo van a absorber porque ya este niño está cambiando el término de lo que estaba sucediendo en el país. Entonces, y como obviamente el término de terrorismo es una exclusión en toda póliza de seguro de incendio y todo riesgo de incendio, o sea, hay pólizas exclusivamente solamente para terrorismo. Nosotros desde ese momento empezamos a estar investigando. En ese momento las aseguradoras absorbieron los riesgos, pero ya para los otros años empezamos a cotizar las pólizas de terrorismo para cada cliente y todo, o sea, los clientes grandes. Permítame.
Wow. Okay, people are trickling in, and we're going to get started with our second part of Q&A sessions today. We are welcoming Blur Brazil, and I never know if I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, but yes, okay. And Blur has a fantastic presentation. For those of you who have not seen it, I highly, highly recommend it because it is absolutely AI in action in very practical ways. Blair is a data scientist and has worked in various capacities, and now I think is mostly dedicated to these projects that started as a pilot program. Maybe I can describe it as that. And as he has mentioned in the presentation, and very quickly were adopted with his company because people see the results. So I'm very excited to have you here today with us.
Thank you.
So right now, what would be if you guys have questions, feel free to jump in. And I have some questions about the process, how you showed us all these use cases in the presentation where you are bringing AI into your workflow for analyzing, for capturing information, analyzing information. Which one was your first project?
The first project was last year. The embodied carbon report actually was my first one last year, which was a good stepping stone from it. And again, it was quite surprising being very heavily involved in machine learning during my master's, and immediately just the end of my master's, our LLMs were sort of blowing up, so to speak, and pivoting really quickly to the LLM space. And I already had a good, strong mathematical background and also had a very lots of exposure to sort of the building performance metrics and energy performance and building stuff like that. So it's just marrying those two things was the very first project.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And so you went in, you say, what prompted you to do an ML master's?
That's more of I guess more of a personal question. I just really liked math and learned to code, and that was a really unleashing a lot of mathematical skills that sort of are latent in sort of everybody, I think. And I just wasn't getting a lot of recognitions for learning to code and stuff like that myself, and wasn't getting a lot of recognition for some skills I was bringing to the teams I was in. And so it took a more rigorous, formal program that one would find in a master's study to finally get some recognition for this skill set. And so you have sort of robust training in sort of civil engineering, and you also have this strong technical background in data science. And sort of organizing the data that these different infrastructure projects and developing infrastructure entails these days. And if you can marry both, it's quite an important skill set to sort of feel like we're in control of these processes that we're building cities and
Yes.
connecting the world and stuff through. So it's quite an important skill set. And certainly University of Victoria, I'm very thankful for them for being able to find ways to sort of connect civil engineering and machine learning.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think, it's, I think it's incredible. It's just to share with attendees, I met Blair at a AI related conference, and he was showing some of the uses of the PyTorch environments that are part of how we connect with how we use AI. And it was so fantastic to see that's you are bringing in, you're saying, okay, I'm specialized in this field, I'm working in this field, I'm already bringing in some of these skills. I'm going to go out back, and this is something I'm doing right now, go back to school and kind of fine tune some of that, and also get the recognition for that. But and to show sometimes it's the skills are already there. You're organizing definitely some of the programs. The programs that I'm in right now at the University of Buffalo is fantastic. There's a lot of great structure and in-depth diving into things. But then you have to come back to the real world and implement that, right? So your projects are such a fantastic way to look at how we can chunk things up so that we're not addressing, the ginormous amount of data in different places. I think I have mentioned this yesterday. It's very interesting to me, the case that your use case for the bidding process, because I think that can be very well adapted to, for example, grant writing.
Yep.
In a very similar way. So maybe one of the things that I wanted to ask is, obviously you had a lot of historic data from the company that you were able to leverage. So was it a negotiation to get that data, to access that data, or people were already open to the idea?
Oh, I'm really lucky here at SureSpan. Civil engineering is in a lot of ways, ancient profession, but I'm really lucky here that they're very open about trying things and knowledgeable about the value of the data. And that's exactly why they see value in a data scientist that has this skill set to transform and to filter and slice data in ways that are expressive and educational. And we can make decisions from. And so I have to give a lot of credit to the culture here. We still have a pretty traditional office, but overall, the attitude is very modern. And so that's always like just one big obstacle, is this being able to use the data in all sorts of different ways. So that's not been a problem at all. And there's just a very openness about making sure that these things are being applied internally.
That's I think that's a very positive experience, because I know that in some organizations it's departments are very fragmented, and so they're very wary of letting go of their data sets into for other things other than what they are already using them for. And it's like, well, that can, I mean, it's the examples that you share are really, it's incredible how much you can process things and how much you can steer the language model that we're using. And that's my next question about how you picked to work with your data. And we were talking earlier today about the augmentation of the generative systems with external data. And this is a fantastic use case for that.
Yeah, I definitely think like when my mind goes there, I think of the transportation cost analysis that was in my presentation as well, and that's where we have transportation data, but over time it sort of became disconnected from the loads, and it really inhibited decision making because again the data is very fractured, and so it took time to just massage it back to have multiple databases back in one table. But then also additionally, we used LLMs to make the table wider with new types of information. And this all sort of lends itself to having more predictive power when it comes back to making decisions about it. The match score, the bidding again is a really insightful because again, it starts with a really concrete use case that we were spending a lot of times analyzing bids, but to think of reducing it to one number was really novel. I didn't Google search it. Nobody told me to do it. It was just like creativity and my part and really trusting that this was the way to do it, and it was absolutely turned out to be the right way. And but that's a lot of skill. It's just knowing how LLM works, making sure we're always leaning into their strengths and not sort of their weaknesses. This ability to reduce information and synthesize, one point is like really important. And having a background in machine learning, so knowing about validation and how to track different data points and making sure we can sort of trust the data that's coming out of it. But it's also also like a political skill set to make sure, again, goes to that integrative and making sure users can trust that I'm sort of carrying out that use case that they discussed and those pain points that they were discussing. And, again, that match score for bids is like dead on exactly where we need to be to apply this kind of stuff in an organization. So yeah, really happy with that.
Yeah, and I think that is a great example of using and knowing your data, knowing your internal data for your organization, and being able to say, okay, this is where we have where we can see, okay, this one worked, this one didn't work, this one worked best. I am going to use that and make the AI, the model, focus on my interests, focus on my needs, focus on my data points, versus giving some sort of generic idea of what would work and what wouldn't work. And it will be a wildly different output for you than for some other company.
Yep. It would look very different, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's other low-hanging fruit that similar approaches would have great profit and great increases in productivity with these sorts of implementations of LLMs to be able to reduce complexity. This is not really available at the scale of humans. Like it's unbelievable.
And I was very pleasantly surprised and encouraged by the fact that, and it probably also goes to show the culture in your organization, the idea that you were piloting these and you were going to have a meeting about implementation, and they're like, okay, we already adopted it. That is fantastic.
Definitely very singularly unique in my experience as well. But I also approach these things very seriously, and I really sympathize for users and their pain points a lot. And I find myself often adopting or like really internalizing their pain points. Some of the stuff to do by hand is just really, really tedious and complex, and I don't necessarily wouldn't want to do it either. Like, I guess that's why I sympathize. I don't know if I'd want to do this every day too. And I just feel very grateful every day that I have a skill set that I can actually build tools that just turn it into a couple of minutes, number crunching, cents on the dollar, resource utilization, and yeah, we're off to the races and making everybody's life much simpler.
And connection. I think I think one of my takeaways from your presentation was your ability, and this is part of your skills and your interests, and your ability to synthesize, your ability to connect different parts of the processes in the organization and to see and to come up with those ideas. So that is, the creativity, the human creativity, and empathizing. I think this is a very important point, empathizing with the pain points of some of the users in those different departments.
Oh yeah, it's immense. And having a lot of confidence. I really kind of get lost in the weeds. I just love the subject matter. And the stuff I'm describing is so radical. You just use this data, let's use this data, we'll add this data, and we'll do this. And to really get buy-in that the end product's going to be amazing, I have to sort of let a lot of that nerdy stuff go and sort of focus on building that bridge to make sure the trust is there when the product is released and they can use it and stuff like that. So the transportation cost analysis is a good example of that. Again, it's we're sort of deploying now this predictive model that simplifies a lot of things, and it took a lot of time to sort of get it in a format that people trusted the output, that it was sort of putting out sane things, and we're going to see sort of uptake from users there as well. And man, that kind of analysis, like even 2 years ago, would have been completely impossible without LLMs. Just you could not do it. And that we're able to sort of reconnect on a very deep level all this disparate information about our transport loads is really important to organizations that want to use their data. Like the knowledge is there, the information is there. And we probably hit an LLM endpoint about 28,000 times to fill in the table.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, let's go into some of the more technical aspects. Or one of the questions I have for the beginning of the process is, did you try out different models to see how outputs would work? Like I don't know, maybe GPT, maybe Claude, maybe Llama, or did you go in with an idea of what you wanted to use?
We knew pretty well that we sort of switched between OpenAI and some of the meta models. In my experience, they're getting very, for the kind of analysis we're doing, they're getting very commoditized, which is really, so we're kind of in a side using strengths that are, and we're saying like decreasing costs and using those resources. So like that's exactly where you want to be. Instead of these like always having to use the absolute state of the art, we can actually use older models and still get great results. And so that's one thing why we're able to hit an endpoint so often. I do write modular code so that we can sort of try out. I'm using like a really dirt cheap model when I'm sort of developing and making mistakes, and it's like you can't really even tell it's charging anything to the bill. Like it's just absolutely tiny. And then when we actually sort of deploy to users, I will switch out to a higher model. And I do have certain validation notebooks that I can run 3 different types of models all in the same query, and then we can sort of compare. You can do like 20 or 30 or 40 and sort of compare the outputs. And so we do comparisons, and it is modularized to change. We also consider changing endpoints and stuff like that. They change models and stuff on people. So it is sort of from a workflow standpoint, we do have ability to swap LMs rather easily, but we also don't really complicate that process. We don't wring our hands like it's working, like go on to the next problem.
For people who are more at the beginning of their AI journey, let's talk a little bit about this aspect of cost. So when we talk about the cost of the models, one of the things that happens is we go into the models we were talking about yesterday. We use the APIs to connect with models that may be outside of our control, or we need to download a model. And I do use, for example, Llama 3 for a lot of local tasks, and it's just sufficient for what I do. And one of the things that allows me to do is keep all of the data private in my local environment. But tell us a little bit about the cost and how that what that means. So
Sort of how we look at costs.
no,
Right.
Just in terms of what do we pay for when we get an API and access?
Okay. Well, here's the sort of an important thing that we look at tokenization of something. And so I was talking before the transport cost analysis, as I was adding columns, we pinged an endpoint about 28,000 times in total. There's also some development ones like that. And it's quite amazing to think about because our query is absolutely tiny compared to our prompt. Like, I gotta use my hands here. Like our prompts are generally about 100 times bigger than our query. And that's so we're sort of driving accuracy a lot. And so from that sort of perspective, we want to see more prompt caching where we're sending the system prompt once, and then we're just reiterating just the query. That would be a big help. But overall, our sort of big picture in other companies that do have a bit of research budget. No, we're not a research-based company or anything like that, but do have some power to sort of innovate in-house. These sorts of costs right now are completely negligible to us. Like this is nothing to us, the cost of these resources. And so we just use and use and use and use and use it within reason. You don't want to necessarily leave services on and whatnot, but right now the pay-as-you-go LLMs have been working quite good. One of the reasons that we would start looking to use what we would call a dedicated endpoint, and this is some people want to work locally as well, as if we were sort of if we want to keep much more tight control of our data, certainly healthcare is one reason where you'd want a private endpoint. And also if we had lots of users, we want an ability to scale. But overall, our use cases are not really falling into that. We're sort of aware of it. Sometimes a private endpoint would be about anywhere from 1,200 Canadian to 2,400 Canadian a year, depending on some different characteristics. But so far we haven't come any reason. If we were doing some fine tuning, we would run anywhere from about $5 to $30 for a fine tuning run, Canadian again.
Okay,
so very affordable.
And I think this is also very interesting because that means you are really leveraging your data, your internal data, and paying a nominal amount to connect to the generative process, and that gives you output that you can use in various ways. And the processes, the workflows that you generated, I think are super innovative and very extremely practical. So
yes, extremely practical.
Your users are using the scoring, they're using the reports, they're using the summaries to make decisions in real time for real projects.
Yep. And sort of to know what I'm really happy about is just lets a lot of users focus on details they'd much rather focus on, and details that really do make a difference in projects. And so that's exactly where you want technology stepping in and getting rid of all the tedious stuff that's complex. And it's amazing how well these LLMs do in expert niches to get for repetitive stuff. But we have so many things that to save money and to keep projects moving. It's in the details, and it just really allows people to really make decisions about effort much better, much better. And that's, I'm just so happy that we're seeing that kind of innovation in construction.
So yeah, I think it's also an area where communications people, we were talking earlier about being able to help in the curation of data so that they can train. And I think we're going to move on, see more of people looking at leveraging their data, people looking at using their data for fine-tuning smaller, slender models so things can be faster for specific tasks. And that will be, collaboration is very important. So I have a question about your team. Is it are you you're driving all of these projects, right?
Yes, yes,
Oh.
I'm just by myself, utilizing a lot of like super simple Microsoft Teams integration. Like again, like I don't fret overcomplicating things. Like I'm nerdy. I overcomplicate data science like enough for like the whole for everybody. And when it comes to really deployment and stuff like that, I just keep it dead simple, and I don't really overthink it. That whole match score thing, it's had such success. That's all over email. It's just like automated emails. It's super simple. Like the transportation cost analysis is just some like toggles on MS Teams app, like super easy.
Oh.
And we're gonna sort of get some help sort of upgrading that to a more like our map-based system, just because people I give the people what they want. Like I don't have any problem with that, because as long as you sort of phase it to be achievable. And we'll probably have someone else kind of do the mapping part of it now that the models or the predictive models are made from this. But at the end of the day, sort of communicating results is something that can be done if you really listen to what they need. It can be a very simple lift for sure. I think people overthink that a lot, and we've had great success here. Just I'm one person, but I can really listen and target and really strategize how to hit this point really far away. And we're going to do it again and again and again with different projects here next year.
Oh, that's fantastic. So let me go back to something you mentioned. Yes, I think that the simplifying and also thinking about the simplifying the communication of the output. So you mentioned there's some automated emails that, for example, might go out to people giving them the score of some of the documents that you're looking at for a bid or things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just a high level executive summary, because sometimes we have to move quite fast on them, and people might connect certain projects with certain specialties or other projects we have, and so the executives are very interested in having that summary email. And again, the results of the analysis are kind of attached to it, all ranked by match score, and very digestible. There are so many ways we could overcomplicate that, but like it's working, and people are using it in to make decisions and stuff like that, which is really nice to see. The estimating pipeline, again, we're trying to get this like bid payload all together, and they look at again using historical data, then moving toward what a new bid would look like just really doing a big heavy lift for people. And then once we get that in our internal systems, we could do more refinement on it. And again, it really helps. It's just not a particularly complicated process. It's something we just sort of like shovel in the system. It's all there, and then people can kind of go through, and they're much more familiar with how to go through all the details of the system to put an estimate together. But the bulk of it's kind of there, and it's just really helpful. And so I don't know, that's really communicating, but it certainly helps people make decisions about their effort, I think, really well.
Well, I think that this one of the questions that I had is, when you have like an executive summary, is there somebody looking over that before it goes out? But you just said it was automated emails, right? So that's coming. You have tested your workflow with the tool. You're like you I guess quality tested some of the results. This is giving me the output that I want. And in this case, and this is for me interesting for writers, a lot of times we think that, okay, we're gonna look over every single word and make sure and curate every single comma, and sometimes you don't need that. So we can focus our attention in something that needs to be, for example, published, versus a quick summary that needs to be used for decision making.
Very good point. Very good point. Yes. I didn't really think of it that way, but that's exactly kind of my attitude. Is I'm very focused on the end result and getting this huge amount of effort off the executives' plate and some of the junior professionals here that we are doing this. And yeah, I sweating through periods and stuff in this summary. Like it's I think I asked for 80 to 100 words, like just enough to know if they need to like go in and look in more detail. Yeah, so and I guess yeah, just like really keeping an eye on the big picture is very helpful to resist that tendency to like really overthink things. And I think overall it makes it's more pleasurable for me to work with. And the success we've had here with that strategy, I think sort of like gives me more confidence that we're sort of hitting the right balance between insane detailed
On the
research
data,
level
yeah.
LLMs and implementing what users want.
Yeah, this ties into something we were talking about yesterday with some of the sessions about the fact that written communication, one of the advantages is that you do not have to repeat because people can reread. So if you shrink it all down to some of the essentials and you put it at the top, then people can say, okay, I read these, I get these. Now I need more detail. They can go into the next level and maybe go into one of the reports themselves that has that, or compare the one that was score number 1 and number 2 and say, you know what, these ones are almost the same. So we're going to go with, we're going to use this set of criteria.
So important. Yeah. So important. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
It's very important. Things are so complex, including these sorts of processes and transportation code. And it's always about allowing users to kind of choose their level of engagement, what they need right now. And again, it's having that real empathy and sympathy for users that my little tool is not the center of the world that day or that hour, and really allowing them to choose their level of engagement. And it's hard to sort of, again, fine tune a project to make sure it has those characteristics. And it's hard to not take it personally that other people have just never even heard of my tool. Like, okay.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's like there's you're working and letting it out into the world, and so you have to be open to the feedback and
yeah.
love it. And
I like what I do. Like I'm happy getting up every morning. Like,
so let me ask you a little bit about the process. How long did it take you when you said, okay, now I'm ready to, I want to go into this project. I'm going to start with my data over here in order to get your first results and then to deploy it to people in the company? How long was that process?
for about 2 or 3 months, generally speaking.
Okay, so that is incredible. I mean, I'm thinking about times when as a translator, I was translating reports for companies to make those kinds of decisions. And of course, translation adds another layer of time and effort. But even the English, like we were like, oh, we want these translated, and the English wasn't ready, which means the people that were reading it in the source language couldn't make that decision because they were tweaking this and tweaking that, and it was taking like an 8 months for one report to be finalized. It's a probably it's a different context with medical devices, but it's still I can see that same process today with all of these and scoring and looking at which ones of the manuals needed to be addressed first for an update, for example. It would take us much less time.
Yeah, exactly kind of the approach. Yeah, exactly. You just sort of you can embed that in the prompt, and away you go. The 2-3 months would sort of break up into an initial part where I was sort of massaging data and working with the data, and then sort of putting together the pipeline. All goes very quickly, and then you sort of hit a point of deployment where you're dealing with servers and stuff like that. And I always slow down like a great deal when it comes to deployments. It's not a very big part of the project, but that's what actually gets the fluidity that we're used to in sort of modern internet communications. And so that deployment, I slow down. I could learn a lot there. But so that's sort of the general.
No, that's good. Thank you for sharing that, actually, because I think that's that's a good insight to have if you're, for people who may be thinking, okay, I want to help my organization, implement something like this. And we can have probably a team of maybe 2 or 3 people that are going to help me gather the data. I'm going to help them curate it to make sure that things work properly, which I think I cannot stress enough that there's a lot of time and headache that you can save by actually making sure that your input is what you want. So if you're having certain kinds of reports, and for some of my clients, I have historical documents, and they have changed over time in how they're structured, and they couldn't understand why I needed to use make them all homogeneous, so that because we're going to use a context prompt, and then we want to query them, and if they don't match, the system is going to get confused. So by taking a little bit of time at the beginning and massaging the data, then you can get much better and consistent results at the end.
Yes, it's very, very important. And it takes a lot. These are pretty complicated data sets. That transportation cost analysis was only 6,000 loads in 4 years, but that took me over a month to prep and to get in a state to be able to run the pipeline. Yeah, so it will go 2 months, and then finally just like hit it, and it processed sort of overnight, and then sort of like it was done. But yeah, that took a lot of time, and that's a pipeline like that is probably anywhere, I don't know, I would say between 3,000 and 5,000 different operations. So you gotta be like pretty attentive, detail oriented in programming that kind of complexity for sure. And it takes a certain skill set. I love doing it personally. But I think in another life I'd be like a watchmaker and all there with like the thousands of little mechanisms and stuff like that. It's great sport for someone like me. That's a real challenge to control that much complexity. And again, it's just having the characteristic that people don't like. Other people in the company just do not appreciate it, and that's totally okay. Like, just use the model. That's enjoy it, make your life easier.
I think I absolutely appreciate your enthusiasm and your passion, and like the showing, and this is where the collaboration for us and in communication to say there are so many possibilities, and it is so exciting and so fun to see that. I am incredibly grateful that you shared all of those use cases. That is fantastic. I want to acknowledge the time. I know that we had a half hour, and if anybody has a question, comment, we can take a little time. I'm trying to see, Nuria seems to be having trouble connecting. So we're going to take advantage of that to see if there's any questions for you. Is that okay?
Yep, please, yes.
Yes, Kate. Let's see, you're on mute. Hold on. I think I can unmute you from here.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Sorry. In plain language, we've had to spend a lot of our time educating our clients on what plain language is before we can even start a project. Are you experiencing the same? Are you having to sort of train people up on what you're doing, or are they just giving you you go do it and give us a result?
People are very excited about large language models and their applications to the business. And so I see a lot of difference in other sort of business transformation that's come along the last couple of decades. This is something that there's some apprehensive about, but generally, I don't know, maybe it's just my demeanor or my character. People seem rather confident to let me sort of guide these use cases to a tool or something like that. And so I don't see a lot of hesitation there at all. And so that's something to sort of consider, that there's definitely a characteristic in AI and writing that might be different than other sorts of trends that have come along and changed industry. I hope so.
Well, definitely, as Romina said, your examples would also make really good marketing tools for your services, because they visually show them,
Yeah, that's where, again, my background in design and engineering.
Yeah.
If you InsureSpan, people are very used to my presentations here having like no words whatsoever, or make just a couple titles on slides, and the rest is all pictures and graphs and stuff like that. That takes a lot of confidence, but again, these pipelines are very complicated. You know, I need these sort of graphs just to get my own sort of sanity a lot of times, and to explain why things are so complex and taking the time they do. These are the sorts of tools I use to sort of
Right.
make my case about the delays and stuff like that. And I also think that it's quite important to share them, because I don't think they're particularly novel. Like, we need so many different industries need this kind of innovation. Other people sort of need to see them. I'm hoping it's kind of like sparks ideas and stuff like that. I need to learn more about it. I don't really know like what I've sort of stumbled upon here, other than it's getting good results.
Thank you.
And that's I think that the continuous learning and discovering. I mean, I can only imagine next year if I ask you, it's like all the projects that you will be able to share. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I want you to talk to some of my users and be like, oh, hey, see, that really helped there.
No, that's fantastic. Okay, we somehow Nuria is still having issues. I don't know if it's connectivity. She's texting me. I'm trying. So we're going to. I know I don't want to take too much of your time. I know that you're here. You committed to until 2:30. So I appreciate that you're staying over time. If you want
We'll help you out.
if,
We'll help you out.
yeah.
Yeah. I'll hustle for you. Like, go. I'm in the forums and things. I may check up there after this. Blair Birdsell at LinkedIn. They got all sorts of videos and other fun things going up there. Like, yeah, check it out.
The connect I really appreciated also the visuals in your presentation, and so all the things that you share, it's really helpful, and it's really
it was a great topic. I thought, like, AI. Well, AI is not going to place. It's going to be something that uses AI does, and yeah, very, very, very true topic, and that's why I don't want to pretend that it's secret. It's all up here, and keeping it all secret. Like, anybody can do this. It's like there's some prior knowledge there certainly, but it's not particularly secret. I'm not trained to be a wizard or anything like that. I didn't go up a mountain to learn it. Like, this is just trial and error, really liking what I do, really listening to people and putting together my tools and their problem in really creative ways, and sort of just rolling with it, not overcomplicating things. That takes a lot of discipline and sort of self-awareness about yourself and sort of the problem you're facing, and being able to narrow down on the real user problem that's sort of in front of you. And yeah, just just liking what you do.
I love that that completely resonates with something that Kate was mentioning too, that for us in plain language is about the end user. And so the listening to the pain point and thinking about it from their perspective, and then incorporating yours in the sense that you know your field, you know what you're doing, you are passionate about it, and so you can marry both things. And it's very important to me to emphasize that, yes, you're listening to the end user, but you're also looking, it's not just that one answer, that one simple answer is the one simple answer that is true to our data, to our process, and to all of the things. So in a way, our communication goals or our action goals, that is not just, this is because the user prefers it this way. This is because we know it's going to help them act better. Make better.
Yes, and it is a very much listening is very important, but it's a discussion as well. A good example of that is as we were sort of discussing this transport cost analysis, and the driver of it there is that it takes, when we're trying to move a load of equipment or construction materials, it can take a lot of time to get an accurate quote. And we can lose jobs because it takes too long for us to accurately price moving goods around. And so we needed a tool that was really instantaneous in getting us a quote, and also like a range of values that it might be. And so that's easy enough. But one of our users came back to us and he wanted it in sort of a menu format. So this type of load is this price, and this type of load is this price. And data science and machine learning don't really do that. I can figure out all sorts of distributions, like sometimes really complicated distributions, but it's not exactly a menu. Like, you know this, and this is the price of it. And it was interesting because again, we always try to make, qualitative decisions. And I was able to show him in our data set, the words that he wanted in his menu were not in the data set. Like I can't make a conclusion about data about how you want with like words that are literally not anywhere in our data set. And so it doesn't, there's no bridge there, there's no connection there. It's not something possible. And so he bought that, and we sort of like worked around it. But that means it's give and take. I can't deliver my menu, but I
Yes.
wasn't expecting them to say, I want a map. I want to put a pin here and a pin here and then get your estimate. I was like, well, sure. I was like, okay, let's do it. Like, it's not my specialty, but there's a lot of benefits to that in an informational way, in that it gives you instantaneous feedback that the route is correct. You get this like visual feedback that I want to move a good from here to here, and you see it on a map.
So-
And then it's just a matter of going into the model and bringing that information out.
For the that makes me think for the geographical information, right, in the map, are you using R, or what do you use for processing that geographic?
We haven't started it yet.
Oh.
We sort of had the model all built, and I was expecting all these like sliders, but people wanted the map, so we're going to do that. And basically, we're just going to use Microsoft Power apps and stuff like that. We'll build it all in there. They have a good API, and my other colleague here at SureSpan is pretty apt at that platform, and so it'll just sort of go into Azure Maps and
Okay.
use it, and then run some of that information into the machine learning model and sort of return it in a digestible format of the user. So it's a great front end for a probabilistic model. Yeah, it's completely.
Good. Yeah.
I can see why they chose it. I thought it was quite good, and we'll try to deliver on that.
No, that makes sense. I was thinking, because we were talking with Serge about using R, and so for some geographic data, it's interesting to, I'm thinking processing, okay, how would I go in and look for accurate geographic data? And here it could be, for the US, it's possible to go into the census data, combine that with, there's data sets for R, combine that with R and bring that into our workflow to say, to create the visual, and then, bring in our data sets to pinpoint and say, okay, this is the distance, and this is, the historical data of how much it has costed in similar situations, etc.
Yeah, and I do a bit of R, and I am, hopefully for the transport cost analysis, I have all the routes. I have like 4,000 routes all like in GPS coordinates. So I would like to do a little map in R. Maybe like for Christmas for my boss, I'll make it.
Oh, that's
in
so
R.
fun.
But for the moment, again, it's much more of a user interface thing, and R doesn't present a nice, simple user interface.
Yeah,
and it's deployable and like really fluid for users, and so we need something a bit else. The actual model itself is just like this big
because
file of arrays.
It is an end user preference, because you would have been able to do the same thing with the sliders, but then they just want something even more, more graphic.
But more informational, more tactile, and it's not my expertise. I've never like coded little pins on a map or anything like that, but
the fun challenge.
I moved to where the users wanted. They're not asking me to climb every mountain on a continent and stuff like that. So like definitely achievable. And the model's sort of mostly done. I was sort of like putting this finishing touches on it today, but the cool LLM stuff's all done for it. And we'll just sort of sit that on like a Microsoft product and interface with the map. And I thought it was a really smart suggestion from the people that will use it, and I'm happy to follow up with it. And again, like the root of that is just like all like just really trusting users and building trust with them. Like I showed like we can't make a menu for these items. Like it's not within my ability, but you can sort of keep working through these problems and keep an open mind. And they came up with a really good solution. I thought a really good suggestion.
No, I am. I find it very interesting that is even that example of your back and forth with the user. It's like, okay, the menu is not possible because we cannot bring in words about these menu items because they're not in the data set. So it's part of when we think about, again, translating this into plain language, and we talk about the end user is so important. The end user is so important, but we cannot get lost in what the end user wants and then make the data set say something that it doesn't.
Oh, very
Um,
tempting.
So
Very tempting, yeah. And it's really respecting the user. I don't think that it's not out of sort of, they weren't wrong to want a menu or anything like that. I guess that's sort of my
Yeah.
approach. Like, I have a lot of respect for them and the demands of their job, wanting this tool and stuff like that. Doesn't mean I can always deliver, but there's I have a lot of tools, and so it's just a matter of finding where another happy medium was.
Yeah, and to educate each other, and it's like, okay, this is what I would like, and it's like, okay, this is what's possible, and this is now beyond, and not just saying, oh, we can't do it, is why we can't do it. This is and it has to be a dialogue. So I think I like that you mentioned that it was a conversation.
And very again, really like data driven. I like did word searches and stuff through our database, and I could really show like, here's the words on your menu, and here's the words in our data set. Like, some had zero. They
Yes.
were not in our data.
Nothing you can do
And
about that. It's
yeah, yeah. But again, really creative uses and stuff like that. And we're really hoping to do more automated reporting and stuff like that. One of the things is when you see that modular nature, there's this tendency, there's lots of ways to like make these swarm agents, and there's like multi-agents that have a lot of agency to make one agent do a lot of different decisions. And we sort of controlled a lot of the complexity in the reporting and to modularize it a lot, so that we can really tell with much more accuracy where things are going awry, and really be able to modularize the complexity a great deal. So when things go awry, we can only have to look at narrow little areas. And when you have these big multi-agent systems that are impressive, and they're going to continue to do lots of amazing things, it does sort of disinhibit a lot of rapid movements and having to deal with a lot of complexity and stuff like that. And we want to just sort of reduce that surface a lot, as much as possible, to control the complexity to our advantage. And I'd recommend that a lot when we're sort of thinking about how to make these sort of decision-making systems and reporting pipelines and stuff like that. Is I'm still would say to modularize it. Like, they're coming up with cool things, but I haven't been bitten yet by sort of the modular breaking down of the complexity and stuff. They're still complex. Like, they're
Yes,
still really complex.
but I think that also it's a microcosm of what happens in general in AI, which it becomes if you don't have the modularity, it becomes more of a black box, and it's harder to parse apart and look at how I can fix certain things, or how can I can improve certain things. And that's why for agility and control, if you have modules, then you can go in and look at improving. Maybe you can't improve all of them at once, but you can improve one, and that one already gets you, output that is from 80%, it goes to 85%. And if you had to do all of it at once to get to 85%, it would take you maybe 3 times as much time or cost.
Yeah, you're just lost, or you go backwards somewhere else, and they're really complex. And I just can't. There's been no really good use case there where you have to use these multi-agent systems. Like, everything's been really decomposable so far, because we're really thinking in terms of pipelines and stuff like that. So we're really lucky with that. But there's definitely some interesting projects out there that are doing super agents and stuff like that. So I'm not completely opposed to it yet, but yeah, there's just so much low-hanging fruit, and I would encourage everybody to go into their organization and look at ways to really simplify a lot of this to great effect, and it just sort of magnifies if you can just get that mix right.
I just want to mention that there are places where you can go and actually try things with much less coding knowledge. There's no sponsorship or anything, but like Zapier or Make or Cheap AI, which we have a presentation tomorrow about that. And it's just like places where you can create some automations and try things out, and then maybe gain ownership. I think the way you're doing it is there's a lot of control that you and your team have over your processes.
Yeah, like you definitely need your wits about you if you're going to ping an endpoint 28,000 times. You really have to be. That's one reason it took so long to prep the data, is like we really need to understand any edge cases in there that we're going to break our pipeline and how it's going to flow on, because you were using, AI and other AI outputs, like all sorts of crazy stuff. And so it was really important to be very robust in our pipelines and whatnot. So there's a lot of like complexity there that is quite important. So I already had a lot of this background. I'd been working with data sets that sometime already took 2 or 3 months to work with anyways. And so I'm glad to see that it's generally this relatively the same when we're doing this sort of data augmentation with AI and stuff like that. We're sort of in the same steps sort of apply, but there's definitely taking ownership, at the small scale, learning these skills. I kind of came backwards. Like I was already coding, and then LMs blew up, and so it's very much an extension of this production side of it. But yeah, definitely, I didn't wake up one day being able to like work on industrial scales and stuff like that. No, I definitely
Yeah.
made mistakes on other people's projects.
Well, there is learning, and so that there's learning, but there's also a lot to gain if you dive in and you get started and kind of like pull up your sleeves and get going. And I know that some people we have for the summit, and for people who are going to be watching these later on, there's a lot of people that are at different stages of diving into using these tools. So there is a learning curve, but there's a lot that you can achieve once you get going and get creative. And so I like this term that is go into your organizations, look at the low-hanging fruit that you can tackle with some of these automations.
Yeah. Like a lot of the deployments stuff like that are just like absolute, like emails having an effect. Like don't yeah, they just don't let it stop you there. And definitely, if you want, the coding does allow a greater effect, to be able to set up a pipeline that will sort of run day after day after day. It's and something that runs with thousands and thousands of steps. That's how you sort of make things really, really robust, and it takes time to build up with that. But man, there was a day in 2014 where I was like, I could never learn to code. Like, it is not me. I could never do it. And now, it's something I do every day, quite happily, and definitely possible for anybody. And I'm someone that definitely wants to have a very big effect, and I'm very happy to be here in Vancouver at SureSpan to do that.
Well, thank you so much. I'm finally getting Nuria to come in, but what we're going to do is take if it's okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to, instead of going into my closing remarks, we're going to talk to her. Hopefully she'll be here in the next 5 minutes. So I will leave this on. I will just connect with her to make sure that she can connect. Thank you so much, Blair. This has been fantastic. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to give these give you the hearts from from Zoom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so
No,
much.
I really hope everybody good luck in all their projects.
We'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, yes, we are here. Nuria is with us, and it was actually we had a little bit of a longer conversation with Blair, so that was fantastic. Nuria is a medical writer, and she has been helping clients communicate in the medical space for quite a while, and has a lot of fantastic experience. And I'm very happy that she has done for us a presentation about guidelines for use of AI. So we're going to switch a little bit from getting into the weeds of a very practical project to looking at the use of AI and making the decision. Do we use it? How do we use it? Do we ban it from our organization? So welcome, Nuria. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you. Does anyone have any questions in general? So yeah, so I think I've been thinking a lot about guidelines because when you start thinking about like, okay, so I want to use AI or my people in my company are thinking about using AI, like how do I regulate this? And a lot of people end up saying something like, oh, you cannot, hi Sebastian, oh, you cannot use AI. And that's all they say. Or they say, another thing that happens a lot is you hear about companies that buy a lot of licenses for people in their company to use AI. Sorry, I'm just noticing that you can barely see me. So let me move my computer. That's better. So yes, so you have a lot of companies saying they buy all these licenses, and then you go back like 1 month, a year, 6 months, and no one is using it. So both examples are like, one is the extreme. One is do not use it. The other one is use it. Here you go, and just go and figure it out. And both ways have problems, right? So I'm very interested in like creating advancing AI literacy and helping people and companies actually start to think about how they can use AI. And one thing that became clear once I started thinking about this was that we need to establish guidelines, right? So that we are not so afraid of using it, and we know exactly what we can do and what we cannot do. So that's kind of like the background of how I came to be interested in guidelines. Sebastian, do you have a question?
Yeah, but I'm not sure it applies. But I was talking before with Romina about the confidentiality term that I found here issue that I find here in Buenos Aires very present. My English is not very good. Is that, but companies are worried about confidentiality. Those who work with companies are advised not to use AI because they may, of course, many people use it anyway. These are the kind of problems that I was interested in hearing you what you think about them. I'm starting to. I'm not an expert also on AI. My field is writing, but I think that what companies may be doing is develop their own AI closed systems. These were my concerns. I don't know if they apply to what you're presenting, or if you are interested in talking about them.
No, those are great concerns, and your English is perfect.
No,
I think don't worry about it. It's perfect. Listen, okay, so that is a typical concern, right? Is the confidentiality. So you may be afraid that if you upload like proprietary, like confidential information about a person or about a company, that then it's gonna spread and other people that are not in the company are gonna know about it. So for example, there was a very famous case right at the beginning when ChatGPT, when OpenAI released ChatGPT, and like in the first few months, this was even before 6 months, okay? It just appeared, and beginning of 2023, Samsung, the big company, the phone company, some of their coders started using ChatGPT, and then they noticed that there was a leak. So some of the information that they had uploaded or had uploaded in the conversation, then there was a leak. It appeared in someone else's conversation, right? And that was like a big scandal. So you have, from that point of view, you have that example. And then the other example is you have all of these companies, like famously the New York Times is suing OpenAI because not only do they say that OpenAI trained on their copyrighted material, but that especially in the beginning, if you asked questions in a certain way, ChatGPT would answer in a way that sounded very much like what the articles were in the New York Times, and this is like almost easier to explain if you remember the earlier examples was like, write this like Mark Twain, or write this in the style of, I don't know, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, like write this in the style of someone, of a very famous author, and it would change, right? It would change the text and it would write in that particular style. And that was like, is this copyright infringement or not? And like, what is going to happen? So you had these two questions and you still have them, right? So what has happened since then is that a lot of these companies, so you have OpenAI, Microsoft with Copilot, Anthropic with Claude, Google with Gemini, they all have what they call enterprise level access to the AI bots. And in enterprise level access to the AI bots, what they guarantee is that they don't use your data. So whatever you input and your chats, whatever you input into the chatbot, they're not using that to then go and train the chatbot again. So that is.
But you must click buttons and say, don't use my input, no?
It depends.
Like
it
that.
depends. So if you are in ChatGPT and you have a pro account, so an individual pro account, yes, you must click that button. But if you have an enterprise level account, which is it's different, okay? So enterprise level, so in a personal professional account, you can click that button and then it doesn't train on your data. But for enterprise level account in ChatGPT, in OpenAI, it is called the teams, which is for small teams, which is you need to have 2 people at least, and it costs a little bit more, costs $30 instead of $20. Or enterprise. They're all called ChatGPT or OpenAI Enterprise, Claude Enterprise, Gemini Enterprise. Microsoft, you can have Microsoft Word, all of that as a personal, a family. You can buy a family subscription or individual subscription, but you can also buy Microsoft Office, so that's like Word, Excel, all of that, as an enterprise, as a business. And if you get it as a business, you get more protection. This is even in the cloud, right? When we're talking about the cloud, if you have your normal Google Cloud, you have or your normal Microsoft Cloud, and you have your personal account and you have this cloud, your cloud as a personal user is not as safe as your cloud as a business user.
Okay.
It is also cheaper. It is cheaper to buy Microsoft as a person than it is as a business, right? It's not a big difference, but it is a difference. So this is the same thing that they are doing with the chatbots, right? Is that if you access it as a business, they promise, and now, like, do you trust them or not? and it's a risk benefit analysis, right? That you need to do. So that is the same thing that when we moved to the cloud, we needed to do a risk benefit analysis. And I cannot do that risk benefit analysis for you. I
No,
don't know.
obviously.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but
I can
but
only do it
it's
for myself, right?
yeah.
So, but it is like having the cloud allows you to do things that you couldn't do before the cloud, right?
Yes.
And so having these AI programs that can help you do certain tasks. So I always like to stress that we're not talking about, at least for now, it doing our whole thing, but
No.
certain parts in the process, it can really help,
Yeah.
right? So it is like if that gains you, I like to say that even say it only gives you a 10% efficiency gain. 10% in a 10 hours, that is 1 hour. If you work 40 hours a week, that is 4 hours a week. So imagine what you could do with those 4 hours, right? 10% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you start thinking about it, 4 hours in a week, that's half a work day. That you could either take that half day off and go have
Friday
work-life
morning.
balance,
Yeah.
you know? So that is like, so that is like the big picture of like, do we think it's safe or not? So there's more that you can do. Like, so there are like risk management has been a big thing. And if you think about like banks use, before this generative type of AI, banks have used AI, artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms and all of this for many, many years. That is really where, like, if I was giving examples of what is AI, what is artificial intelligence, a lot of the examples that I will give are banking examples because they use it so much. And as you can imagine, for banks and financial institutions, like privacy is a big thing. So there is a whole industry of risk management with data risk management, right? And there are techniques that are really well defined for data risk management. So it really, like, I am not in a financial institution, but I do work in medical writing. And in medical writing, the type of medical writing that I work is also, like, I always say I am blessed to work in continuing education because I only work with established science, right? I'm not working with pharmaceutical, like someone in publications. They are working with like breaking news, you know? It is much trickier. But where I'm working, but there's still a few areas where you need to be cautious. So for example, if you have like these surveys with a lot of names from a lot of doctors that fill out these surveys saying that they think this medicine is better or that medicine is better, you have two people there that might not be very happy if you upload that information. One, the doctor, and you are uploading their opinions that they thought they were giving to you, and now you're uploading to the internet, right? And two, the pharmaceutical industry that probably paid you to do this survey, that is like, why would you putting uploading information where like a bunch of doctors are saying that they don't like my medication? So there are ways to anonymize data that can allow you and these are a well-known, well-established risk management principles that you can anonymize the data in a way that then it can be safe to upload. So that can be something that you can put in your, if you never thought about it, you wouldn't think about it. You just say, I can't use it. But if you actually stop and start to think about like, what are the risks? What in my work process actually constitutes a risk? And what can I do then to minimize or eliminate that risk? Right? I think that's a more practical way of looking at it. So instead of looking at like these big huge problems, I like to go very narrow, go very practical, right? How can I minimize or eliminate the risk here? And what can I still do? And if there is one thing that I am like, I'm not comfortable, this is too risky, I would never put this online, then that you don't use AI for that. But if there are other things that you can, then you can look at, and you see, so that's what I want. That's the message that I want to transmit. I want you to think about it, go a little bit more granular and start thinking of like, what can I do and how can I do it? How would it be possible to use it? Does that answer your question?
Completely. I have another question, but I don't know, Romina, if you have another.
I wanted to bring up something that I've learned recently. I attended a presentation by Professor Raluca Diapa. I think I'm saying her name correctly. She is a cryptologist professor at Berkeley, and she brought up she has an AI company now called Obscure, I think. So she works with data security, and in at the Gen AI conference, she brought up a topic which connects with these at a high level, and I think companies are going to move into this. So there's for data encryption or for data protection, there's encryption. And so we use encryption for things to protect certain data. And so some people have talked about, okay, if we encrypt the data, going to ChatGPT and coming back, basically the only one who can see it is ChatGPT. And I may or may not be comfortable with that. For that, I do think that, yes, modular approach, some things that you can send to the cloud is great. Also, thinking about local development for local deployment for specific tasks. But something that's coming is not quite big scale yet, but something that organizations, and you made me think of this, Sebastian, because you talked about organizations, is confidential computing. So this process that Raluca talks about is different from encryption, because encryption protects your data going somewhere or being in your cloud space, for example, but it doesn't protect it while it's being used. So these confidential computing, there's a hardware infrastructure that protects the data in use. And the amazing thing about this future deployment, I think right now it's expensive and it's not as well understood, and all of the hardware is not quite there. But it's coming, and so we need to think about, okay, let's think about this modularization, and let's think about how to deploy certain things in our environment and certain things in other environments. For example, these would allow two companies to upload privately data into the same LLM, get an output, and each of them collaborate with the data, and each of them get their own output without ever seeing each other's data. And I think this is a huge step into collaborations without sharing IP. That is obviously coming at an enterprise level. So I think that idea of using the enterprise level of systems, is going to increase and allow us to do that. And in order to do that, we need to think modularly about our data. What data I'm going to share with, if I'm a big company with this other big company, but if I'm a professional, what data can I share with you so they can, the LLM can talk to both of our data and have different outputs for you and me that we're both happier with than if we were just uploading singularly each of our datas.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I hadn't heard about that, but that is a really cool thing that they're I hadn't heard of it. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
There's the technology is called a hardware enclave. Enclave. I never know. Enclave is the French word, and I always think about it that way. But and it is the way I understand it is hardware encrypted. So even the data in use is being protected, and that will be a game changer for these kinds of collaborations. So for me, I think I'm glad that you're mentioning these in terms of the modularity, because I am right now doing very private conversations with private data with Llama 3 in my computer, and some other conversations with GPT and Claude and all this stuff.
Yeah, and that is like Romina is the expert at trying to build her own LLMs. Well, she tried. I've never tried to build my own. I'm more like I decided a long time ago that coding wasn't for me. So I've been waiting for exactly this moment where they made it so that I can talk to it and it can do what I want, you know. I've been like for years, like I'm a biologist, right? So they used to say, oh, you need to learn R to be able to code like these pretty graphs. And I'm like, no, I want a program that I can tell it what I want and it's going to do what I want. I'm not learning R. I'm so sorry. So this is like a perfect thing. But I do think that with things like Llama, with open source models, if that is another way to go, right? You can create small, so you have the large language models, and there are these like big AI, but now you have more and more and more people talking about small AI. So models that you train to do one small thing, and then you only really need a couple of chips, which most, especially the new computers are coming out with like nice chips, right? So you get a new computer that has one GPU or two.
That's what I have.
You know, like you get like and then you can run one of the mini models, like you can download one of the open source models. Yes, it does take a little bit more. You will need to maybe in the beginning work, if you are not a coding person, maybe you hire a contractor that is a coding person to help you code and help get the model. But once you get that model to do that one thing, it does that one thing, and it does it completely in your computer, not linked to the internet, and then it's safe. So that is another way, and that is a way that a lot of companies are going. It is just because I'm a freelancer, so I'm an independent contractor, I tend not to focus on those because those I cannot use them, right? But that is definitely a way to do it, and it is becoming more and more possible. I just want to shout out, okay, I don't know how to say this properly, but Virginie Chagnon, I think that's how I say it, from Quebec, in Canada. So Virginie said she works for the public health department in the government, and the Ministry of Health said that they can use the Microsoft Copilot and use it with sensitive data, but cannot upload confidential data into ChatGPT. And that makes sense. Most probably they did buy licenses for all of you. And that is like a big enough, so the Ministry of Health of Canada is a big enough company that I don't know. Like, I actually want to know. If you find out, please let me know. Most probably Microsoft gave you guys your own server.
Yes,
So
well,
that is another
technically, I
way.
can answer that.
Yeah.
Yes, I work for the Ministry of Health of my province, which is Quebec. And yes, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. So yeah, they pay for huge license.
Yeah.
And yes, we do have many servers around the province.
Yeah. And they are just yours, right? You don't share that server with anyone
Not
else.
at all. And there's something different. I'm part of the occupational health department. It's an under department. And we have innovative big boss, let's say, and he's a bit into security. So our own part, smaller part of the organization, we have double servers. Anyway, so yeah, it's really local.
Okay. Yeah. So that is another way, is that like if you're an individual user, even if you are an enterprise, but you're a small enterprise, you are probably sharing your server with other small businesses. But if the moment you become like a bigger business, they will dedicate a whole server to you. So then really it's like servers are kind of physical things, right? This server is not talking to this server unless they make them talk. So like even like, so then, but another problem that you have in a situation like Virginie was talking about was that, yeah, everyone, for example, just think about something like the CIA, right? It's easy because you can imagine, like, so they have this concept of the need to know, right? So like they have all of this confidential information, and not everyone inside the CIA knows everything, right? Only the people that need to know. So they have like, not only do they have different levels of confidential, like you really only, they call it read in, they really read in only like a very few people. So that is another thing that like people think about when they're thinking about like implemented company-wide bot, is like, how do you protect when you have these niches of information within a company? And that is more difficult to do, but they are also solving that problem, right? So that if you go to the big solutions, so like OpenAI and etc., Microsoft, etc., they are solving this big problem as well, as in even within the company, I don't want everyone to know about everything, because that's how leaks happen. So my point is, like, you can decide whether you trust them or not, and again, like, that's a risk benefit analysis. But if they're able to do that for a big company, the fact that some big companies that I know are very protective about their data are trusting them makes me trust them more for like even my small application, is kind of what I'm trying to say. So you have, for example, Moderna is this, it's not big, it's a new pharmaceutical industry, but it is big because it did one of the big vaccines, right? And they use AI for everything, including for research and development and manufacturing and everything. So if that's, do you understand what I'm saying, right? And those departments don't always want to talk to each other, right? You don't want everyone to know about the new thing they're developing. So there are some barriers. You can even create barriers even within a server. So even within a company.
Yeah, and there are a lot. It's incredible to see how many companies are popping up that are providing cloud computing. So basically places that are on the cloud but dedicated to you, so you can download to your cloud a bigger model and interact with it in that private space. And what I do like also about some of those companies is that they provide on and off times, so that if you're not going to use it all the time, that server is not running needlessly and is being used by somebody else, so that energy is not just going to waste, basically like leaving your light on while you sleep. So that aspect is also interesting. I want to acknowledge Heba shared with me the name of Raluca Adapapo company, and it's Obscure Technologies. I'm sure, I haven't looked at the website, but I'm sure they have a website if you want to look it up. So I just wanted to say say that, because I realized I say thank you and everything, and I commented, but it was on a private message. So I think it's worth sharing. So thank you, Heba, for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I like that it's from South Africa. For those of you no one knows, I'm from Mozambique and I studied in South Africa. So
Okay.
yeah. Any other questions? Let's see.
I have another one. If I don't want to. I was interested in something you mentioned a couple of minutes ago. This other aspect of your work, and it's the guides, the manuals you do for your clients. If I didn't understand well, that you make some guidelines and some manuals in order how to use AI.
So what I do is I help people think about it, right? So it really varies from person to person, from company to company, right? So what I do is I help you think about how you're going to develop these guidelines, right? So I talked about this in the presentation. You need to think about like all of these sorts of questions, from like which tools are you using? Are you using like general internet tools, or are you only using tools that you have an enterprise or a professional license for, an enterprise license for? And then what can you use it for? So you need, again, like, it is going as granular as you can go. Like, can you use it for generating text? Can you use it for generating images? In which use cases would you use it for text? In which use cases would you use it for images? And then you think about disclosures, okay? So like, for example, my work, what I do a lot is a client sends me, they need me to look at a certain disease area and treatments, right? So I'll do a lot of search of like a literature search about this disease and this treatment. Can I use AI to help me do that search? Do I need to tell my client that I use AI to help me do that search? Then I take like all of these papers. Imagine I use NotebookLM to help me like look into the papers. Can I use NotebookLM? Do I need to tell my client that I use NotebookLM to try and like get a very grasp of like these 50 papers, 100 papers that I downloaded and like get my ideas in order? Do I use NotebookLM, or then if we're talking about 50 papers, really only Google AI Studio can do this? Can I upload the 50 papers to Google AI Studio and ask it to give me an outline for a paper? That is really strategy, right? Can I do it? Can I do that? If I do that, do I need to tell my client that I did that? How do I, at every single one of these steps, how do I make sure that I agree with everything that AI is doing? Like, how do I do the quality control of every single one of these steps? And when do I need to tell my client that I did this? Right? All of these things are like things that I'm just talking about my own process, right? So then imagine I use it to write, right? I have made it really good, and I can write the way that I want. Maybe if I say write the whole thing, it doesn't do a good job. But if I go paragraph by paragraph, I want you to write one paragraph. I want you to use source A, B, C, and D, and I want in the paragraph for you to hit points 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it does, and it writes a really good paragraph. And I'm telling you that if you do it that way, it will write a really good paragraph. Can I take that paragraph, copy it into Word, and send it to my client? Do I need to tell my client? How do I fact check that? I'm going to tell you right now. I tell it, write this way and give me citations at the end of every sentence, author date. So then I have the papers. I gave it the papers, right? So I have the papers, and then I go to Adobe Acrobat, and I open Adobe Acrobat AI, and I do, does this document support this claim? Copy paste the sentence from there to there. Adobe says, yes, it does, and this is how it does. And actually, let me show you where in the document it does. NotebookLM also does that. So I fact checked. Everything is correct. I mean, it is there. It is good. The whole document is correct. Do I need to tell my client that I did this? There's a lot of human input there. But so you need to think about like all of these steps along the way. Like, what can I do? What can I not do? What is safe? What guarantees quality? And when do I need to disclose this? Right? And you need to do that for everything that you do. And come up with your own guidelines. You need to decide for yourself. Like, does my client care that I use AI? Not that, like, a lot of people use Grammarly. I like to remind everyone that Grammarly is AI. And not only like, so I used to work in publications, and when I worked in publications, I did not, well, I still don't use Grammarly exactly because of that. I was not allowed to use Grammarly because Grammarly does it does the grammar check online. So it goes to their servers. And when you're working in publications, you're working with things that are still secret, have not been published before. So if you're using Grammarly to check the grammar, you are sharing it with an outside entity. So like, I like to remind people that Grammarly is AI. So can you use Grammarly in your organization? If yes, do you need to tell your clients that you're using Grammarly? So maybe now that I'm working not in publications, people use Grammarly everywhere. So I don't need to tell anyone that I use Grammarly if I used, which I don't. But when I was in publications, yes, I needed to tell people that I was using Grammarly because they needed to decide for themselves, am I comfortable with this being sent to an external server? So that is the granularity of where I want you to think about when you're thinking about your own your own guidelines, I want you to think about all of those. And I want you for every single thing to think about the risks and to do a risk benefit analysis. So this sounds very overwhelming, but it doesn't need to be.
No,
Okay?
no,
Because
no,
you start with
yeah.
a few and it gives you ideas, and then further down the line, things are going to be easier, right? And then also, like, so what guidelines also do, like, then it's easy. Then every time you're like facing a question like, do I use AI or not? You already have you have already went through all the thought process, right? And because you went through all the thought process, it's easier for you to use it. Number one. Number two, if you have a client and they're asking you, how do you use AI? How do you use AI? It is easier for you to say, I use it like this, and the mechanisms that I have to protect, like what you're concerned about, which is one, privacy stuff, and two, is it accurate? Like most of my clients,
Yes.
they mostly care, like, are you writing things that are accurate? They don't want fake references. That was a thing, like even today I was in a talk and they were talking about the AI gave them fake references. They don't want fake references. So I tell them, like, I use AI then to go and fact check everything. And it just makes my fact checking much faster. And I explain, you know, and because I can explain, because I can, and it makes it much more trustworthy. So it makes it easier for me to decide whenever there's a new thing, am I going to use AI or not? And how am I going to use it? But it also makes me easier to talk to other people about it because I have my own AI guidelines and my own principles. So that is the benefit of having guidelines.
Yes, yes.
Hiba, I see your hand up.
Oh,
Hiba.
good. You
Yeah, you mentioned something I was about to say is if client trust you, so they will trust your judgment and how you develop your own guidelines. But it will take time for sure, especially AI is new, so it's hard and it takes time. And the other question is about pricing. Because people think if someone uses AI, the AI does all the work. So they say, oh, so you did use AI, so why shall we pay you the same amount? So I don't know if Romina or you can talk about pricing. And this even happened at work. Like if someone suggested the use of AI, like the higher like manager will say, no, we pay you to do the work by hand. I know it will take a lot of awareness, a lot of time for people to know like AI is like refining our work or simplifying our work, but how you handle this accusation of not doing the work, so like less pricing. Thank you.
Nuria, you want to take that? I have very strong opinions about that.
Let's hear your opinions. I'll come in.
So I think that there is this assumption that you're lazy and that you're like, oh, you're letting the AI write and you're just sunbathing in the backyard, which is absolutely not the case. So I spend time with my clients, and I am in the process of doing this actively. As a matter of fact, I have pushed one of these AI meetings to next week because of the summit with a client where we're going to go through the process. And I said, I actually suggested that we incorporate AI because there is so much to do. And they're like, well, if we're incorporating, if you want to use AI, you mean that you want to use AI and we pay you for what? Oh, let me show you what you pay me for. And I go through a think aloud session, which by the way, they pay me for. I do not disclose my IP for free, except for here. I walk through how I think through and how I incorporate modularly. I think this is idea that Nuria was talking about, modularly, make it granular and think about different steps, how I incorporate AI into my workflow and what other changes I make. And for me personally, I am now writing a lot of plain language content and I'm trying to improve the outcomes of readers in terms of what they understand and the actions they can take and how many mistakes they make in those actions. So we're trying to reduce that. And we can prove that we do increase reading comprehension, that we do decrease errors in performance. And so I show them, look, this is what all of the things that we can do with AI. This is my final output. And there's still a huge difference. What is the biggest outcome of all that is I can handle more content in the same amount of time. So they are, in a way, you're, maybe you ask me, so you're making less money. I'm actually making more money because they want me to do more content, usually. So I started with brochures that were 2, 3, 4 pages long. Now I'm doing a 90-page document, which would have taken me the whole year to do if I didn't have AI. And I would have suffered through it because some of the content is tedious. And so now with AI, I can process things, I can get ideas, and I fight a lot with AI. I show the clients how we were talking about yesterday about the restructuring content with AI. It's a mess. Tell me what you see. Tell me the patterns. I don't agree with your idea, ChatGPT. I don't agree with your idea, whatever model, right? It's like, no, you're telling me there's 5 sections here. I think there's 4. I think there's 7. So it speeds up my thinking process. And sometimes I consciously, I show clients how certain documents I will go in and have a in-depth conversation with the document by myself, because I don't want to be influenced by AI. Even when I gave the AI, when I gave a custom project or my own prompts for Llama, my own sort of thinking process, because the model still has its own flavor, and I don't want that to be influencing me. Some things I can right away give it to the AI and get some ideas rolling. So it's a matter of showing that your output is different. And if honestly, I would never, if AI does a good enough job at what the client needs, I tell the client, use AI directly. Go ask ChatGPT for that. Don't hire me for this. Because I am, it's more value to me and to the client to say no, to tell them, I need the gist of this. Go ahead and ask the model. When you need your readers to really understand, when your readers need instructions, and you want somebody to make sure that this is going to be understood in the least amount of time with the least amount of effort. And sometimes some clients want, with the most aesthetic pleasure. We're going to a readership and we want people to also, sometimes have a little fun with what they read. AI can give you interesting ideas, but the empathy element, it's a human judgment element. They come to me and then they pay me. If you want to know, there's a long email where I don't know what the call to action is, you may ask ChatGPT about it. Why? I don't need to come in and do that for you. So it's changing the way in which we interact. A lot of times before, even for translation, I used to translate for clients emails between clients and customers, because it came from Norway and somebody in Spanish didn't understand Norwegian. Now I go to the translation tool. Hire me if you have a contract, and then you need to sign your money away, then hire me for translation. But while you're trying to understand whether you're interested in this project, go ask the tools. So it's conceptualizing what you do and actually adding and having confidence in the value that you offer, and being able to show my output is better. The day when the output of the machines are better than mine, we will have to do something else. But right now, I have not found, and even when I try to clone myself into the AI, it cannot do what I can do. And so it's have confidence in your value and be aware of how to show your client that your output is better, that you are adding value to that process of communication.
I think those are really great points. There is this thing that people like this It's like a story, I don't know, like these short stories that people tell. And one of them, like, it's like the electrician, like your light wasn't working and you call an electrician. An electrician comes and he like tightens one screw and then he gives you the bill. And the bill is like $500. And you're like, $500 for tightening one screw? Like, explain to me, why does it cost $500? And then the electrician gives you another bill and it says, tightening one screw, $1. Knowing which screw to tighten, $499. So there is, like, I worry that, so let me tell you, like, I worry a lot about education. I am a writing person, right? I write, I'm a writer. And I used to teach at university, I used to teach writing. I used to teach students how to write in the sciences. And a lot of when you're teaching writing and when you think a lot about writing, you realize that a lot of learning how to write is struggling with the writing. So like, for example, one way to teach people to write better titles is tell them every day to write 100 titles. They're called headlines, right? And so that these are the exercises you would give to students. You'd give them one paragraph and you say, rewrite it 10 times. Write it differently 10 times, these same ideas in this paragraph. And that is how we used to teach writing. And that is like, you learn writing by struggling with the writing. And one of the worries that I have is how do you teach students these same skills, the skills that we used to teach by kind of like by osmosis, right? You would learn to recognize what a good argument was. You would learn to figure out how to do a good argument, a good scientific argument by practicing it so much and by reading so many other people. So how do you teach that now or in the very near future when I believe most of the writing will be automated to these other companies, right? So this is, I think it's a real concern that not only I have, that a lot of people have. And some of it is like, you think like in mathematics, we don't give calculators to students in first grade, second grade, in primary school, right? We teach them how to do the calculations, but then at some point in time, they do get the calculator. So then how do you teach mathematic reasoning once they get the calculator? So these are things that one needs to think about. And the reason I'm saying this is because at the heart of the question of why will I pay you to do something, why won't I pay you less if you're doing it with AI, is that, right? Is like, is the important thing, like, knowing which screw to tighten is as important as tightening the screw. So knowing which questions to ask AI, knowing how to ask the questions, knowing how to divide into all of these different steps is as important as what the AI is doing, if not more important. Thinking like, if the AI gives you strategy, looking at that strategy and understanding, is this a good strategy or not? Or should I say, not a good strategy, think again, and not good because of this, or good because this. All of that like takes knowing, but how do you then teach that knowing? So what I am starting more and more to think is that either I will not accept clients who say you cannot use AI, or that I will charge them more. Because AI makes, not that they can expect a lower price from me for what I already do, but if they want me to do everything manually, I might charge them more. And there is, you get less money, you pay less money for things, for art that is created by machines than if it is handmade. If it is handmade, it might even have imperfections, but you pay more for it. So there's a value to being handmade. I agree, but do you really need handmade in certain things? I think maybe with poetry, like with really deep poetry, maybe we want it to be handmade, even if it's not perfect, right? But other things, so we need to think about these things in that way. How do I think what Romina said, like when people say, oh, why will I hire you? I can just do it myself with AI. I said, oh, well, go do it. It's fine. And then they'll come back. because I don't think they can do it. They don't have time, right? And they don't know, they're not writers. They're not medical writers, the people that hire me. So they don't know, they look at something and they have no idea how to do quality control, how to see if the strategy is good. All of that is still me. So I'm still the expert. And then I also do what Romina says. Like I also like explain to them how the AI is helping me. And one thing that I always say is that they used to give me an assignment and it used to take me 1 week, like 16, 18, 20 hours to do something. I track my time very judiciously, so I know that this is true, right? And I used to do it, and then it was time to hand in, and I couldn't have time to do anything else on it. And sometimes I would have in my mind, like, it would be nice if I could go check this. It would be nice if I had time to do this, but I didn't have that time because, like, we're all working on deadlines, right? Now I have more time because the grunt work, I have reduced my grunt work to say 8 hours, right? From 18-20 to 8 hours. But what that allows me is that it allows me to put it away for 1 day, come back, read it again, and then I find things that I could change and make it a little bit better. And I work a lot in the grant acquiring part of the work. So like having the argument be a little bit better might be what wins you the grant. Okay, I have time to now go and like find me a good patient story that will really illustrate this. So I have time to go find good patient stories. I have time to like have interviews with doctors or with nurses or whatever to find what their pain points is to make the work better. So what this gives me, like when I was saying, if you have 4 hours a day, 4 hours a week extra, what are you going to do with those 4 hours? Right? You can take the time off and go have work-life balance. And I think that is like, maybe we should prioritize that. That should be our number one thing, right? But okay, maybe you feel like I already only work 20 hours a week. Thank you, you're very fortunate. And you have 4 extra hours and you're like, I really would like to do something productive. Then think about how can you make your work better, right? How can we go above, right? Think about like what we used to do 100 years ago. Accountants could only do keeping the books, right? That is all they did. They put all the entries in the book and then they calculated and recalculated to make sure that their maths was right. Today, accountants can do much more than that. They can now, because all of that is automated, what they can do now is they can look at the numbers and give you a report that helps you actually have clarity of where your business is making money, where your business is losing money, and where should you focus your energy next. So we have, like, things have not compressed because of automated calculations in accounting. Things have expanded. We are able to be better at do it better with our businesses, even with nonprofits, even with everything, because we accountants have the time to actually look at our numbers and give us really good insight from our numbers. So that is the same thing, right? If we can get the grunt work done by the machine, that leaves us time to get really good insights from the results of the grunt work. That is what I try to transmit to my clients as well.
I think that's that is a very important point to see. I'm shifting how I'm using the time, and maybe something that I used to take a lot of time into restructuring certain things, and now I can accelerate that. I have a couple of points. Something reminded me of a comment that Sebastian made earlier about cohesion. I find AI output hyper cohesive at a superficial level, but not coherent at a deep structure level. So there's a lot of input that has to happen there, especially in Spanish because of that. For example, the need in English to always have a subject. And so in Spanish, we don't have to, and sometimes AI does have that kind of tendency. But even in English, I find it like this hyper cohesive, and this is one of my research points at UB. A different application of what you just said about calculators and students and writing. One of my biggest worries is that we are losing the ability to read long text as humans. And that has given us the ability to think. I love the work by Walter Ong, who was a linguist in the 40s, I believe, and 50s. And his point, which has been said in many different ways by many different scholars, to write clearly is to think clearly. And the way we think because we write is different than the way we would have thought if we didn't write. So illiterate people think differently. And this is a very important point, and why I think education and literacy is so hugely important. And I think in order to convince legislators that we need to have all this attention, your example of a first grader doesn't use a calculator. Why? Because they need to have a sense of math. And if they don't have a sense of math, they're going to go to the grocery store with $100 bill, come back with $20 of change when they only spent $20. And mom is going to be mad. And they're not going to know why. The same thing is happening. We should think about it the same way for writing. We're going to teach young people to write in order to think clearly, and then go ahead and use the AI like you use the calculator, but have that foundational skill. So I love that analogy. I'm going to quote you on that. Okay, we're coming up to the top of the hour, and any more comments or questions, ideas, things for tomorrow? Yes, no, maybe? Well, thank you, Nuria, for logging in and switching up. We have some technical difficulties, but it was fantastic. If you haven't watched Nuria's presentation, go ahead. She's gone through a lot of her steps today, but you can take notes and have that in her video. And I think it's incredibly helpful to think through your process and what you're comfortable with in order to go out and interact with clients and collaborate. I am now finding myself like in the process of collaborating and having to establish, okay, how are we going to on each side use AI, and what are we comfortable with in order to come up with a combined product that is even better than what we could have done alone.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was great. Thank you for all your questions.
Thank you, Nuria. Very, very enlightening.
Mhm.
Okay,
Thanks,
we have
Nuria.
questions and input. Okay, so we're gonna see. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 12 for Q&As. Watch videos before you come in, and we'll keep talking. Thank you. Bye.